Have you ever wondered why so many people spend their entire lives desperately seeking God's kingdom, yet never seem to find the peace, healing, and abundance they're praying for? What if the very way you've been taught to understand heaven has been the invisible barrier preventing you from experiencing its transformative power right here, right now, in this present moment? For generations, we've been conditioned to believe that heaven is somewhere far away, a distant paradise we'll reach after death, a reward reserved for the righteous, a celestial city beyond the clouds. We've learned to look up when we pray, to search outside ourselves for divine intervention, to wait patiently for some future moment when we'll finally cross the threshold into God's presence. But what if this entire framework, this fundamental understanding we've inherited, has been keeping us locked out of the very kingdom we're seeking? Smith Wigglesworth, one of the most powerful men of faith in modern history, discovered something that revolutionized not just his ministry, but the lives of thousands who encountered his teachings. He understood that the kingdom of heaven isn't a geographical location at all. It's not a place you travel to after your last breath. It's not floating somewhere in the atmosphere waiting for you to arrive. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness, a realm of spiritual awareness that exists within you at this very moment, whether you're aware of it or not. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You've prayed earnestly for healing, but the symptoms persist. You've asked God for financial breakthrough, but the lack continues. You've sought divine guidance, but the answers feel impossibly distant. The problem isn't that God isn't listening. The problem is that we've been looking for the kingdom in all the wrong places. When Wigglesworth proclaimed that the kingdom of heaven is within you, he wasn't speaking in metaphors or religious poetry. He was revealing a practical, transformative truth that has the power to completely shift your experience of healing, abundance, relationships, and spiritual connection. This isn't just theological theory. It's a spiritual reality that operates by entirely different laws than the material world you see with your physical eyes. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform not just how you pray, but how you experience God's presence in every area of your daily life. The shift from seeking heaven as a distant location to recognizing it as your present consciousness isn't just a change in belief. It's a revolution in how divine power flows through your existence. And once you truly understand this principle, nothing in your spiritual journey will ever be the same again. So let's explore together what it really means when Scripture declares that the kingdom of God is within you, and how this ancient truth can become your present reality. The remarkable thing about this revelation is that it's not some modern spiritual invention or New Age philosophy. When Wigglesworth taught about the kingdom within, he was actually recovering something that had been hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. Jesus himself declared it openly in Luke 17:21. The kingdom of God is within you. Not will be within you someday. Not might be within you if you're good enough. Is within you. Present tense. Immediate reality. This wasn't a promise about the afterlife. It was a statement about right now, this moment, your current existence. But here's the hidden truth that religious institutions have often obscured. This understanding threatens the entire structure of external authority. If the kingdom is truly within you, if divine presence is already your consciousness, then you don't need to wait for permission from anyone to access it. You don't need intermediaries. You don't need complicated rituals or years of theological training. The journey to God's kingdom isn't measured in miles or merit. It's measured in awareness, in recognition, in the simple shift of understanding where you've been looking. This is where the real transformation begins, and it starts with something most of us do every single day: prayer. Think about how you've been taught to pray. You probably close your eyes, bow your head, and begin speaking to someone you imagine is far away, listening from a distant throne. Your prayers likely sound like petitions, like requests, like begging. Please God, heal me. Please God, provide for me. Please God, help me. Has this ever happened to you? You finish praying and feel like your words just evaporated into empty space like you're sending messages into a void with no guarantee anyone's receiving them. But when you grasp that the kingdom of heaven is your own consciousness, everything about prayer revolutionizes itself. You're no longer trying to reach across some unbridgeable cosmic gap to get God's attention. You're not attempting to convince a reluctant deity to intervene in your circumstances. Prayer transforms from pleading into recognition. Instead of asking for something you don't have, you're awakening to what already exists within your being. The power, the presence, the peace, the provision. It's all already there, established in the kingdom within you, waiting only for your awareness to align with its reality. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. We explore practical, mystical wisdom that bridges spiritual truth with real-world transformation. This shift in mindset might seem subtle, but its impact on your daily experience is absolutely profound. When you pray from recognition rather than desperation, something changes in the atmosphere around your life. Solutions begin appearing. Doors start opening. Healing manifests. Not because you finally convinced God to care about your situation, but because you tapped into the consciousness where divine reality already exists in its fullness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding that the kingdom is within you is just the beginning. What Wigglesworth discovered behind the scenes of every genuine miracle, every authentic healing, every supernatural breakthrough, was this same principle at work: consciousness operating by laws that transcend material limitation. And when you begin practicing this awareness consistently, the revelations that emerge will challenge everything you thought you knew about how God works in your life. If this understanding is starting to click for you, if something inside is resonating with this truth, write in the comments, "The kingdom is within me." Here's where this teaching becomes profoundly practical, because the kingdom within doesn't operate by the same rules you've spent your entire life learning to navigate. In the material world you wake up to every morning, everything seems to function by laws of limitation. There's never enough time, never enough money, never enough resources. Disease appears real and powerful. Lack feels like an unchangeable fact. Circumstances seem to have absolute authority over your experience. This is the realm most people spend their entire existence trying to manage, control, and manipulate through sheer effort and willpower. But the kingdom of heaven within your consciousness operates by completely different principles. In this inner realm, there is no lack whatsoever. Disease doesn't exist as a reality. Limitation isn't even a concept. The divine perfection that characterizes God's nature is the only substance, the only truth, the only operating system. And here's the hidden truth that changes everything. This inner kingdom is more real, more fundamental, more powerful than the material appearances your physical senses report to you every single day. Wigglesworth understood something that most people miss entirely in their spiritual journey. He recognized that trying to fix material problems at the material level is like rearranging furniture on a sinking ship. You can work harder, think more positively, apply more willpower, strategize more cleverly, but you're still operating within a system of limitation. The breakthrough doesn't come from battling circumstances with greater force. The transformation happens when you shift the foundation of your awareness from material consciousness to kingdom consciousness. Think about the impact this has on your daily decisions and challenges. When you're facing a health crisis, the instinctive response is to fight against the disease, to see it as an enemy that must be defeated through medical intervention and personal determination. And yes, practical wisdom has its place. But when you operate from kingdom consciousness, you're working from an entirely different starting point. You're not primarily fighting against disease. You're recognizing the wholeness that already exists in the realm of divine reality within you. From that recognition, from that consciousness of spiritual perfection, healing begins to flow naturally into your visible experience. The same principle applies when you're confronting financial pressure or career obstacles. The material mindset says you need to work harder, hustle more intensely, manipulate circumstances more cleverly to create the abundance you need. But the kingdom consciousness reveals that divine supply is already infinitely present in your inner awareness, completely independent of external conditions. When you align your consciousness with this spiritual truth, opportunities begin appearing that you couldn't have manufactured through human effort. Doors open that weren't even visible when you were operating purely from material thinking. This isn't about denying practical reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about understanding the journey from material effect back to spiritual cause. Behind the scenes of every authentic transformation, there's always this same movement happening. A shift from trying to change conditions through external force to recognizing divine perfection through internal awareness. And from that recognition, the material world begins reflecting the spiritual reality you're acknowledging. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding these principles intellectually is just the surface. The real power emerges when you begin applying this consciousness to specific situations in your life, when the revelations move from your mind into your daily experience. What happens when you actually start practicing kingdom awareness in the middle of crisis, chaos, or crushing disappointment? If you're starting to see how consciousness itself is the key to transformation, write in the comments, "I'm shifting my awareness." Wigglesworth called this continuous awareness the practice of the presence, and it's fundamentally different from what most people imagine spiritual practice to be. This isn't about achieving some elevated state where you float above your problems in perpetual bliss, never touched by difficulty or challenge. That's a fantasy, and it's not what transformation actually looks like in real life. The practice of presence is about developing a new relationship with whatever circumstances appear in your experience. It's about knowing where to turn first when crisis hits, when pain strikes, when fear threatens to overwhelm your peace. Has this ever happened to you? A doctor delivers devastating news, and in that moment, your entire world seems to collapse. Or you wake up with symptoms that weren't there yesterday, and panic immediately floods your system. The natural human response is to become completely consumed by the material diagnosis, to see only the physical condition, to believe absolutely in what your senses are reporting. And in that mindset, fear becomes your counselor. Anxiety dictates your decisions, and hopelessness shapes your expectations about what's possible. But here's the hidden truth that Wigglesworth discovered behind the scenes of countless miraculous healings. Before you do anything else, before you make frantic phone calls or spiral into worst-case scenarios, you have the option to turn within and recognize the spiritual reality that exists beyond physical appearances. In the kingdom of heaven within your consciousness, there is only wholeness. Divine perfection is the only condition that actually exists at the deepest level of reality. Disease, deterioration, and death are experiences in the material realm, but they have no substance, no power, no reality in the consciousness of God that dwells within you. Now let me be clear about what this means practically. This isn't about denying the existence of symptoms or refusing medical wisdom. It's not about pretending everything is fine when your body is clearly communicating distress. The journey here is about establishing your foundation first in spiritual truth before engaging with material solutions. When you recognize the wholeness within your consciousness, when you align your awareness with the divine perfection that characterizes the inner kingdom, you open channels for healing power that transcends what medicine alone can accomplish. You create space for the miraculous to intersect with the medical, for supernatural intervention to work alongside natural treatment. The impact of this practice on your healing journey can be absolutely profound. People who've learned to practice the presence during health crises consistently report something remarkable. Even when symptoms persist, even when treatment is difficult, there's an underlying peace that shouldn't logically exist given their circumstances. That peace isn't denial or delusion. It's the natural result of consciousness anchored in spiritual reality, rather than being completely dominated by material appearances. And from that anchored consciousness, from that foundation of inner wholeness, healing begins manifesting in ways that often surprise even the medical professionals involved in the case. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because health is just one arena where kingdom consciousness demonstrates its transformative power. When you understand how to apply these principles to physical healing, you've actually discovered a template that works equally powerfully in every other area of life, where limitation seems to have the final word. The revelations that emerge when you begin practicing presence in financial pressure, relationship conflict, and career obstacles will show you just how far-reaching this truth really is. If you've experienced moments where inner peace defied your outer circumstances, write in the comments, "I've felt this peace before." The same consciousness that opens doors for healing operates with equal power when you're staring at bills you can't pay, when unexpected expenses demolish your carefully constructed budget, when lack seems to be the permanent condition of your financial reality. Think about how most people respond to money pressure. The immediate reaction is panic, followed by frantic strategizing about how to hustle harder, work longer hours, cut more expenses, maybe even compromise values to generate income quickly. The entire focus becomes fixated on the material problem, and every decision gets made from a mindset of scarcity and fear. But here's the hidden truth that Wigglesworth demonstrated repeatedly throughout his ministry. Divine supply isn't dependent on your bank account, your employment status, or the state of the economy. In the kingdom of heaven within your consciousness, abundance flows infinitely and eternally. It's not limited by material conditions because it originates from a source that transcends material laws entirely. When you return to this awareness first, when you establish your foundation in the consciousness of divine provision before taking any external action, something remarkable begins happening in your circumstances. If this teaching shifted your perspective, a gentle tap on that like button helps these truths reach others searching for this understanding. Right action emerges naturally, almost effortlessly. You find yourself making decisions you wouldn't have considered when operating purely from fear and desperation. Opportunities appear that weren't even on your radar yesterday. People reach out with proposals or connections that seem impossibly well-timed. Solutions present themselves that you couldn't have manufactured through human effort alone. This isn't magic or coincidence. It's consciousness demonstrating its own nature, expressing abundance because that's what exists in the inner kingdom you're aligned with. The journey from financial struggle to supernatural provision doesn't usually happen overnight, and that's actually important to understand. The transformation Wigglesworth taught unfolds gradually through consistent practice rather than dramatic, instantaneous enlightenment. This reality disappoints some people who want immediate results, but it's actually the mercy of gradual growth that makes lasting change possible. You're not just trying to fix your current money problem. You're fundamentally rewiring how your consciousness relates to supply, security, and divine provision. So where do you actually begin with this practice? Start remarkably simply. Throughout your day, especially when anxiety about money surfaces, pause and acknowledge this truth. The kingdom of heaven is within me right now. Not will be someday when my circumstances improve. Not might be if I'm spiritual enough. Is within me right now. Present tense. Current reality. You don't need to feel anything dramatic when you say this. You're not trying to manufacture some emotional experience. You're simply training your awareness to return to spiritual truth rather than remaining completely absorbed in material appearances. In challenging moments, when the credit card gets declined, when the unexpected bill arrives, when the income falls short, these become your opportunities to practice presence. Instead of immediately spiraling into fear, you take even 30 seconds to recognize the inner kingdom where divine supply is never depleted, never insufficient, never late. From that brief reconnection with spiritual consciousness, you then take whatever practical action the situation requires, but now you're operating from a different foundation entirely. The impact of this consistent practice might seem subtle at first. You probably won't wake up tomorrow morning to find your bank account miraculously overflowing, but over weeks and months, you'll begin noticing something shifting behind the scenes of your financial reality. Opportunities you wouldn't have recognized before become obvious. Decisions that would have been motivated by fear and desperation now flow from peace and wisdom. Resources appear through unexpected channels. The transformation is gradual, but it's also thorough, touching not just your circumstances, but the consciousness that creates your experience of prosperity or poverty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the principles is one thing, but seeing how this actually worked in real people's lives, how kingdom consciousness transformed desperate situations into testimonies of divine provision. That's where these teachings move from theory into undeniable reality. If you're committed to this gradual journey of consciousness transformation, write in the comments, I'm practicing daily presence. There's a crucial distinction here that separates genuine kingdom consciousness from all the manifestation techniques and positive thinking methods saturating popular spirituality today. You are not attempting to create the kingdom of heaven through mental effort, visualization exercises, or affirmations repeated until you convince yourself they're true. This isn't about using spiritual techniques to construct something that doesn't yet exist in your experience. The hidden truth that transforms. Everything is simpler and more profound. You're uncovering what has always been present, removing the veils of material consciousness that have obscured the divine reality already established within you. The kingdom isn't something you build or manifest or attract into your life through proper mental techniques. It's already complete, already perfect, already fully present in your consciousness right now. Your recognition doesn't create it. Your awareness simply allows what has always been true to become visible in your experience. This shift in understanding changes your entire approach to spiritual practice. You're no longer straining and struggling to make something happen through force of will. You're resting in the awareness of what already is, and from that restful recognition, transformation flows naturally. Let me share a testimony that demonstrates exactly how this principle operates in real life. There was a woman who had been suffering with a debilitating condition for 3 long years. She had exhausted every medical approach available, spent resources she couldn't afford, consulted specialists who offered compassion but no lasting solutions. The diagnosis was clear, the prognosis discouraging, and she had resigned herself to a future defined by pain and limitation. Her entire identity had become wrapped up in being sick, in managing symptoms, in the constant struggle against her body's apparent betrayal. Then someone introduced her to these teachings about the kingdom within, and initially she was skeptical. How could consciousness possibly affect something as physically real as her condition? The symptoms weren't imaginary. The pain wasn't psychological. How could recognizing some spiritual truth change material reality? But with nothing left to lose and nowhere else to turn, she began practicing kingdom awareness. Every day, she would sit quietly and acknowledge that divine perfection existed within her consciousness, regardless of what her body seemed to be communicating. She didn't deny the symptoms. She simply refused to accept them as the final truth about her being. The transformation didn't happen overnight. In fact, for the first several weeks, nothing seemed to change at all on the physical level. But something was shifting behind the scenes in her consciousness. The anxiety that had characterized her entire existence for 3 years began lifting. The fear that had dominated every decision started loosening its grip. She found herself experiencing moments of genuine peace that made no logical sense given her circumstances. And then, gradually, the physical symptoms themselves began responding. After 6 months of consistent practice, she was completely free from the condition that had stolen 3 years of her life. What happened in her experience wasn't a random miracle or lucky coincidence. She awakened to the kingdom consciousness that had always been present within her, and from that awakened awareness, healing manifested naturally. The journey from suffering to wholeness unfolded step by step as her consciousness shifted from identifying with material limitation to recognizing spiritual freedom. Her story isn't unique. It's the same pattern that appears again and again when people genuinely practice kingdom awareness. Gradual transformation emerging from consistent recognition of divine reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because healing physical conditions is just one expression of kingdom consciousness at work. When you understand the principle operating in her testimony, you've discovered something that applies with equal power to every area where limitation seems to have absolute authority in your life. If her story resonates with your own journey toward breakthrough, write in the comments, "I'm recognizing what's already within." The same principle that operated in that woman's healing demonstrated its power in a completely different arena when a businessman found himself staring at imminent bankruptcy. His business partner had embezzled significant funds, creditors were demanding immediate payment, legal troubles were multiplying faster than he could address them, and he saw absolutely no path forward through the financial disaster threatening to destroy everything he'd built over decades of hard work. Every consultant he hired, every attorney he consulted, Every financial advisor he spoke with delivered essentially the same verdict. The situation was beyond recovery. Someone gave him recordings of Wigglesworth's teachings about the kingdom within, and honestly, his first reaction was dismissal. Religious philosophy seemed utterly irrelevant to his very real, very urgent crisis. He needed practical solutions, not spiritual concepts. But when you've exhausted every material option and still find yourself drowning, you become surprisingly open to approaches you would have previously rejected. So during his desperate commutes, he began listening and reluctantly practicing the meditation exercises described in the teachings. The revelation that transformed his situation came when he started recognizing that divine supply existed within his consciousness, completely independent of his bank account, his business circumstances, or the betrayal he'd experienced. This wasn't about pretending everything was fine or denying the severity of his situation. It was about establishing his foundation in spiritual truth before taking material action. In the kingdom within him, there was infinite provision, unlimited resources, and divine intelligence that could reveal solutions his human mind couldn't manufacture through strategic thinking alone. Within 2 weeks of this practice, 2 weeks, an unexpected contact reached out with a business opportunity he never would have imagined possible given his circumstances. Within 2 months, he had restructured everything with new partners who shared his integrity and vision. Within 6 months, he wasn't just recovered from near bankruptcy, he was actually more prosperous than before the crisis hit. The transformation wasn't about positive thinking creating new circumstances. It was consciousness revealing opportunities that existed all along but weren't visible when fear and desperation dominated his awareness. But kingdom consciousness doesn't just transform health and finances. Its impact reaches into the most tender, painful areas of human experience. Our relationships. Has this ever happened to you? A relationship you treasured becomes fractured beyond what seems repairable, and despite every attempt at reconciliation, the distance only grows wider. There was a mother who lived this nightmare for 5 excruciating years, completely estranged from her daughter following a bitter conflict that wounded them both deeply. She had tried everything humanly possible, heartfelt letters that went unanswered, mutual friends serving as intermediaries, professional therapy, even surprise visits that only made things worse. Nothing worked. The relationship seemed permanently broken, and the grief was crushing her spirit daily. When she encountered these teachings about recognizing the kingdom within, she made a decision that went against every instinct. Instead of continuing to try fixing her daughter or manipulating external circumstances toward reconciliation, she began practicing kingdom consciousness. She meditated daily on the spiritual truth that love, wholeness, and harmony existed in the divine reality within her own being, regardless of the painful story playing out in material experience. This represented a complete reversal in her approach, releasing control, surrendering outcomes, resting in spiritual truth rather than straining to force material solutions. After 4 months of this practice, her daughter called. The conversation was brief but warm, with none of the defensiveness that had characterized every previous interaction. Over the following months, connection gradually restored until today their relationship is deeper than it was even before the estrangement. The hidden truth she discovered is that trying to change people or circumstances from the outside keeps you trapped in limitation. But when you shift your consciousness to recognize divine perfection within, the outer world begins reflecting that inner reality in ways you couldn't have orchestrated through human effort. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how kingdom consciousness operates is one thing, but learning the specific practices that develop this awareness in your daily life, that's where theory becomes transformation. Where revelation becomes experience, you can access consistently rather than occasionally. If you've witnessed breakthrough in areas where human effort failed, write in the comments, consciousness changes everything. The specific practice that Wigglesworth taught for developing kingdom consciousness is beautifully simple, almost deceptively so. Every morning before the demands and distractions of your day consume your attention, set aside just 15 minutes. Find a comfortable place to sit where you won't be interrupted. Close your eyes and begin releasing all thoughts about your problems, your needs, your desires, your strategies for fixing situations. This is crucial You're not using this time to pray for things, to visualize outcomes, or to work through solutions in your mind. You're simply resting in one awareness. The kingdom of heaven is present within me right now. The hidden truth that makes this practice so powerful is that you're not trying to create divine presence through spiritual techniques or mental effort. You're becoming receptive to what already exists within your consciousness. There's nothing to achieve, nothing to manufacture, nothing to earn. The kingdom is already established. Your recognition is simply opening your awareness to what has always been true. At first, your mind will absolutely rebel against this simplicity. It will insist you should be doing something more complicated, asking for something specific, working toward some tangible goal. This mental restlessness is completely natural and part of the journey. When these thoughts arise, and they will arise constantly in the beginning, just observe them without engaging, without judging yourself for having them. Then gently, without force or frustration, return your attention to the awareness of inner kingdom presence. You're not failing when your mind wanders. You're actually practicing the most important skill, the ability to redirect your consciousness from material thinking back to spiritual truth. This is the workout that strengthens your spiritual muscles. And like any workout, it feels awkward and difficult at first, but becomes increasingly natural with consistent practice. The transformation happening behind the scenes during these morning sessions is profound even when it doesn't feel dramatic. You're gradually rewiring how your consciousness operates throughout the entire day. You're training your awareness to default to spiritual reality, rather than automatically accepting material appearances as absolute truth. This becomes the foundation that determines how you respond when challenges inevitably arise in your daily experience. Now, there's a complementary practice that Wigglesworth taught, which he called divine indifference, and this term requires careful understanding because it's easily misinterpreted. This isn't about becoming cold, uncaring, or emotionally detached from life situations. It's not passive resignation to whatever happens. What it actually describes is a profound inner freedom where you remain anchored in spiritual truth while wisely addressing material concerns. You care deeply about situations and people, but you are not controlled by them because your source is consciousness, not circumstances. Think about the impact this creates in your daily decisions and reactions. When difficult situations emerge, a troubling diagnosis, a financial setback, a relationship conflict, you pause first and recognize that the kingdom of heaven within you is completely untouched by this material appearance. Divine reality exists beyond what your physical senses are currently reporting. This recognition doesn't deny that problems exist, or suggest you should ignore practical matters entirely. Rather, it prevents problems from controlling your inner state, from hijacking your peace, from dictating your identity and expectations about what's possible. You remain centered in spiritual awareness, even while taking whatever practical action the situation requires. This is the balance point where genuine spirituality meets real life, not escaping into otherworldly mysticism that ignores material responsibility, but operating from kingdom consciousness while engaging material reality wisely and effectively. The revelations that emerge from this practice transform not just specific situations, but your entire approach to living. You develop a dual awareness that honors both practical concerns and spiritual truth simultaneously. And from that balanced awareness, your responses flow with wisdom rather than reactive fear. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because maintaining this consciousness during ordinary days is one thing, but what happens when severe crisis hits? When circumstances seem to completely contradict everything you're recognizing about kingdom perfection? That's where this practice either becomes authentic transformation or reveals itself as merely intellectual theory. If you're developing this inner freedom from circumstantial control, write in the comments, "My peace doesn't depend on conditions." If you've stayed with me through this entire journey into kingdom consciousness, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you're still watching now that you've invested this time exploring these truths with me, tells me you're someone who recognizes when spiritual teaching goes beyond surface-level inspiration into territory that can genuinely transform your daily experience. These teachings from Smith Wigglesworth about the kingdom within aren't just ideas to consider and then forget. They're principles that have the power to revolutionize how you navigate every challenge, every opportunity, every relationship in your life. And if this resonated with something already stirring in your spirit, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. We explore this kind of practical, mystical wisdom every week, teachings that bridge the gap between spiritual truth and real-world application, always with the goal of making divine reality accessible in your everyday existence. Before you go, write in the comments, "The kingdom is already mine." Let me know you made it all the way through and that this message connected with where you are on your journey right now. And if this teaching sparked something in you, if it shifted your perspective even slightly, a gentle tap on that like button helps these truths reach others who might be searching for exactly this understanding in this moment. There's a video right here that goes deeper into maintaining spiritual awareness when crisis threatens to overwhelm everything you've been practicing. It's a perfect companion to what we've explored today. Click and continue with me over there because the journey we've started together is just beginning, and what comes next might be exactly what you need to hear right now.